Okay, cultivating stillness. So, no matter what meditation practice you're doing, as soon as you start to increase your concentration, you start to increase your stillness. Now, stillness is a side effect of accumulated akasha, which is a byproduct of concentration. Wherever there's concentration, uh, the akasha starts to accumulate under the mind. Everything starts to become quieter and stiller, and that's the true value of what you're practicing. So let's say you're doing a mantra and you're repeating the mantra as a loop and you get into that trance type state and everything in the background switches off, all your thoughts switch off, your feelings, your emotions switch off, your body relaxes. That's an accumulation of akashic substance which is creating that. Now, to consciously and purposefully cultivate akasha, there's a few qualities you want to be very, very aware of. The first is your mind's relationship to time. And we pay attention to this through simply slowing down the breath. So if you're doing a pore breathing exercise and you feel the energy, you slow it down. As soon as you start slowing the vital energy down, let's say in building the ball exercise, the release of time happens by itself simply by slowing the energy. So we start off with this feeling of the static in your mind, static in your body, static in your emotions. And as the vital energy slows with each breath, so does the physical body relax and let go more, the astral feelings let go, and the mental static lets go. After a few minutes of releasing time, slowing the breath down, there's a quality of being in the moment. And that quality of being in the moment removes static that's arising from the past and removes static that's arising from projecting into the future. And that release has a huge effect on your ability to concentrate and your ability to cultivate stillness. The next is your relationship to space. So you feel how the mind is contained within the physical body, within your feelings, within your consciousness, and you begin feathering off to those edges. So you let your mind just relax out into space around you, moving further and further and feathering off those edges of the container. Each time you feather off those edges, the mind releases and occupies more space. And there's a breaking point for this in which the feeling of being in a container breaks and the mind becomes freed of the limitation of space. So for our first stage is releasing time, and our second stage is releasing space. Now, when you start putting these two together and you start drawing in the feeling of timelessness and the feeling of spacelessness into the consciousness and inviting those two qualities in, the akasha and the stillness accumulates under the mind. So this is a faster way to get into stillness. From there, you begin paying attention to the qualities of stillness under the mind. And we have various layers. Now, when the physical body is quiet, there's a type of stillness of the body. When the emotional static stops, there's a stillness in relation to the astral body. And when the mental formations and thought forms stop, there's a type of stillness in relation to the mental body. And the layer below that is the akashic layer, in which all that exists is moving in and out of form. So the mind substance is vibrating, the mental fabric of the universe is moving in and out of form, the astral fabric moving in and out of form, the physical is moving in and out. So it's going to akasha and coming back into its state. And we want to pay attention to that stillness underneath things. And this is what we call infinite akasha. When we move from a limited state of stillness to an unlimited state of stillness. And this infinity quality, when it begins to appear in your meditation, that's where your mind should move to. Go to the infinity of your meditation object, of your frequency of concentration, and move away from the limited aspect of it. As soon as you're paying attention to the infinity, which you have access through stillness, there's a a change in your spirit. And the spirit is basically the fabric of consciousness which you're cultivating in meditation. That sense of self disappears. So in one's spiritual self, there's a sense of identity. In one's astral self, there's a sense of identity. In one's physical self, there's a sense of identity. The moment the consciousness touches infinity, you lose that sense of self. And that's an indicator that you're cultivating the correct type of stillness. If you're cultivating a type of akasha or stillness where you feel your identity is becoming empowered, then that would be what we'd call limited akasha, where it's reinforcing the fabric of the consciousness that's interacting with it, rather than liberating the consciousness. So as you move through this vibrational scale of stillness of the body, stillness of the astral emotion, stillness of consciousness, and then working from limited akasha to unlimited, there's these indicators or a type of reflection of the effect of that akasha that's taking place in your physical, astral, mental bodies. So this sense of non-self, losing the physical body, losing the astral body, losing oneself of identity of consciousness, is this is me and this is what I'm building, and that dissolves and disappears, that's an indicator you're doing something correctly. Now, this infinity quality that we pay attention to, it's difficult to ground yourself within it because there's no root. Our normal root is in the body. It's in our feelings, in our consciousness, and it's the fabric of those which forms a grounding. So if we ground ourselves in mental space to concentrate, as soon as we move to the formless aspect of that mental space, there is no grounding. So what tends to happen, a person will be paying attention to this infinity quality, they'll lose their grounding and they'll pop back into the mental space or the astral or physical space. And the law of rhythm will slingshot them back. And once you develop a mindfulness of touching that infinity quality and then the mind rebounding back, you can start to regulate that rhythm. And it's like throwing a stone in the air. Gravity's going to pull it back. But that moment that the stone hits the highest point before it starts returning, it's freed of the momentum of release going up and before it starts to come back down. And each time you touch that infinity state, there's a deeper familiarity with it. So you're developing a grounding within the infinity state by increasing your attentiveness at that moment of touching it. Each time you touch it and are freed of the physical body, it's disappeared, your astral sense of self is gone, the mental sense of self is gone, and you continually enter into that non-self state of consciousness. The grounding starts to form by itself. There's a part of you that becomes familiar with that state, and that familiarity becomes your grounding. And each time you enter, it becomes more comfortable. There's less fear of dissolving or losing one's identity, losing one's sense of self. And there's a comfort that arises within those formless states, these formless jhanas. And this just takes time. The biggest resistor to development is the reason why you're doing it. When you enter into an infinity state, it's dissolving the sense of self which motivated you to practice in the first place. So if you look at a person as a physical goal, they have physical motivation to achieve something. If they have an astral goal, they have an emotional motivation to do something. If they have an intellectual or mental goal, there's a motivation there. As soon as they touch akasha, there's no motivation. So there has to be something underneath that as an akashic blueprint of why you would actually do this. Because if your mind touches infinity, you become demotivated to do it again. There's no impetus as to why you would do that. So we need some sort of blueprint in the akasha as to why you're going to practice formless jhanic training. Why are you going to enter into these infinity states? In Buddhism, they have this aspiration for enlightenment. You take the triple gem and you make a vow to take refuge in the Buddha, to take refuge, Buddha being the destination of enlightenment, and the Dharma, the path, and the Sangha, the spiritual support structure to achieve that. And that aspiration forms a blueprint in your etheric body, which is kind of like a support platform of why you would enter into a formless state. Because you want to release everything inside of form that's containing you in the samsaric cycle. So there's sort of like a deep spiritual support which acts as a motivational force for you to practice formless jhana. And all the spiritual masters that have done this before you affect that support structure so that you can move forward in this new mental infinite space, or shall we say formless space. Without that impetus inside of akasha to investigate it, a person will get bored very fast. The nature of the equanimity will demagnetize any physical, emotional, mental desire to reaccess it. And there's also a threat to one's shadows and one's weaknesses and so forth, which the person unconsciously feels. It goes, this is threatening my existence. This is threatening my physical identity, my emotional identity, my mental and spiritual identity. All those things start getting demagnetized. So there's a high resistance which happens to wanting to do this again. Unconsciously, you're going to lose interest. And on a conscious level, you start questioning why you even practice. And this needs to be dealt with very early. But if you know it's coming, you create a very, very deep accumulation of faith that this is the right process. And you can move through and use that deep accumulated faith in the akasha to develop a root or a foundation for this formless akashic work. Once you've dealt with those obstacles and are able to continue to practice paying attention to infinity, the infinity permeates the mental, astral, and physical body. Now, akasha by its very, very nature, it being infinite, its benefit is also infinite. So if you look at any type of physical training, you develop physical strength. That physical strength is impermanent. It doesn't, when you stop training, the physical strength reduces. If you develop astral emotional skills, it's subject to the duration of this life cycle. It has a rhythm. Intellectual skills, you're going to lose them when you die. They have a timestamp on them. When you develop deep virtues and skills, there's an inclination for those virtues and skills in the spirit that affect your next reincarnation. So there's a carry through with cultivating virtue and cultivating high levels of skill and concentration. When you touch infinity, it generates a very deep yearning in the spirit in your next incarnation to go back there. So the effect it has on future incarnations is quite profound. So it's not a impermanent thing that's subject to a rhythm. It's a spiritual yearning that continues through many, many incarnations after you've touched it. So people have this unconscious, natural yearning towards peace and quiet, towards silence. Person has a hard day at work, they're stressed, they unconsciously want to be unstressed. They'll sit down on the couch, they might put the TV on, they'll numb their mind, they might have a beer, and they go, I just want peace and quiet. And they're seeking, how do they get that? And they do it in very inefficient ways. But they get their peace and quiet by just flopping on the couch and having a beer. The matrix is often, and that's the normal way that people will find that peace and quiet. Now, that peace and quiet is not subject to the rhythm of the alcohol in their bloodstream and the situation they're in, because they're not applying their consciousness to pay attention to peacefulness and quietude, the stillness, releasing time, space, entering the akasha. They're trying to get their environment to give it to them. So this is a natural craving. We always want to return back to stillness. To be still and know that your vibrational match to God is a built-in yearning. People will always be drawn to different religions that will offer that opportunity to reconnect, return back to source. And that's why religious systems attract so many people, because this unconscious desire to return back to divinity. Now, as we go through the Hermetic process of releasing time, releasing space, identifying what this infinity is, whether it's a type of infinity which reinforces our sense of self, that's a limited akasha, or it's a type of akasha releases or liberates the self and creates a non-self state of consciousness. That framework of how you approach this can be very specifically designed for a very specific outcome. Now, as you enter in that infinity state, what remains is the subtle aspects of the blueprint of how you got there. What was the karma stream of how you practiced releasing time? It might be through prayer, releasing space, paying attention to the stillness, entering that stillness, and there's a blueprint. Now, if you plan that blueprint out well, when the akasha comes back through a form of light, that creative non-dual light moves through your karma stream, through your mental, astral, and physical body, it'll reinforce your belief structures. So if you, let's say, were a religious person, say Christian, and you prayed a lot, what happens when you pray? Every part of you becomes momentarily quiet. Everything becomes humbled. Your mind goes into a state of reverence. You're devoted to the deity. There's a certain sacred quality, and you enter the stillness, and every part of you engages that stillness, and you pray. Now, if you accumulated this over time, that would invoke a type of akashic state of trance when you're in prayer. And that akashic state of trance, when you're in that prayer state and your mind touches it, it's going to reflect light. Now, that light's going to be reflected through your beliefs. So if, let's say, you believe God has a certain identity or Jesus Christ has a certain identity, and you touch the infinity of akasha and it reflects light, it'll reflect it through your beliefs and it'll self-validate itself. You'll see Jesus, you'll see God, you'll see your beliefs. They'll manifest as a part of your consciousness, and your karma stream of how you got there, it'll move through your belief structures, through your astral and physical sense of self, and then you'll think that you met God. And this creative reflection, it basically materializes and validates your own belief structures. And if you believed in a different God, you would experience that God. So it's not limited to one religion or another. It's a universal principle of creation. Whatever the karma stream you engage in to touch infinity, when light reflects, it'll come back down that karma stream. And then you'll just automatically assign that, yes, I found the truth. This is Jesus is real, or whatever your religious framework is real, and it'll reinforce its own structure and it'll form a religious fervor around it, which you'll share with other people. Now, if you know this is coming, you'll organize the structure of your practice so that when light comes back down, that it's not feeding any particular belief structure. It's not feeding a deity. It's not feeding an astral sense of self. It's not feeding any physical sense of self. You bring that light down with a sense of non-self to further liberate the consciousness into full release. And this is very different to standing on the street corner and preaching your religion. It does the opposite. The moment you bring a non-dual light frequency through the bodies, there is a deep sense of introversion or a deep sense of need to spend more time in stillness and have more time in retreat and prayer so that you cultivate that deeper sense of non-self. Systems like Buddhism and Hermetics look at this causation chain in advance, and they prepare for it. So that preparation allows you to be very aware of how this light is going to manifest in your mental, astral, and physical body and neutralize any negative effects. Now, if you're in a path of service, you're a healer, and you bring this light down, you're going to become a better healer. If you're a teacher, you're going to become a better teacher. It's going to materialize itself through your path of service. If your goal is for ascension primarily, then it's going to dissolve your sense of self and amplify your relationship to infinity for the ascension process. Now, the moment a person touches akasha in an ascension-based platform, the non-self quality amplifies and liberation increases. They get closer to that nibbanic state as an effect of touching akasha. Okay, so when you're developing your training process, you have to take into consideration of what you're going to let go of during that training process. If you're going to be in a formless state, you can't be holding on to firm beliefs about the nature of reality. You've got to be prepared to let go of everything you believe. And there has to be defabricating quality pre-built into how you practice. And this defabricating quality is a type of mental flexibility and preparedness for change, that you can let go. This is what I believe, and now it's you don't believe that anymore. You just simply go, okay, time to move on to the next level of understanding. That means I have to drop my previous level of understanding. This type of flexibility means you're not highly emotionally invested in any particular doctrine, but you pay more attention to principles. What is the principle you're using to slow energy down, release time? What is the principles you're using to release space? What are the principles you're using to touch infinity in akasha? And when you're paying attention to principles and not doctrines, those principles are the conductor of the liberation of the mind. And there's no religious framework around it. You're not paying homage to any deities. You're not surrendering yourself to anything other than the essence of fabric of your own mind, which is a vibrational match, the universal mind. That's all going inwards, not surrendering anything outwards. As you go in, liberation happens and it defabricates as a result of touching that infinity within the essence of your own consciousness. Okay, so planning this out is very, very important. If you want to cultivate a relationship to stillness, you need to have methods of releasing time, define them, methods of releasing space, define them, methods of relating to akasha, these infinity states. The initial touching infinity reinforces itself, so it's a limited akasha. And then how do you access unlimited akasha and liberate the self? So these steps need to be defined in your training process. And as you get a sense of these principles you're working with, then you can document them and then begin that practice efficiently. My suggestion is not to get too academic about this. You only know what you can experience. So when a person talks about concentration, they need to practice concentration to know what they're talking about. So each step, each principle that you're working with, when you enter into one pointed state of concentration, what happens? Everything else disappears except your meditation object. So you get to zooming in on one frequency that you're paying attention to. And as soon as that starts to happen, there's this tunnel vision that forms, and the concentration of the mind in that one point accumulates large amounts of akasha. And as that akasha accumulates, the mind becomes more laser-like, and there's a relationship between the meditation object, consciousness, and stillness that takes place. And then the accumulation of akasha permeates the consciousness and shifts the consciousness from a physical concentration state to an astral concentration state to a mental concentration state to an akashic concentration state. And when one touches the akashic concentration state, one begins to understand what the word samahati means, what concentration means. And then when you talk about it, you're you're talking about it from experience. It's not an intellectual property. So if you spend too much time reading about these things without actually having a direct experience of what they are, you'll form a mental construct which is incorrect, which is simply not right. And so what we need to do is have a basic framework in place and then keep that framework highly adaptable. So as you get to know through direct experience what these terms actually mean and what these labels are through the spirit touching them and knowing them, then you reorganize those terms and those principles and the way they relate to each other yourself to develop your training system. There's an intuitive sensibility, there's an intuitive intellect that comes into play. The intuition is having spiritual experiences, the intellect is making sense of them, it's grounding them out and then allowing you to navigate your spiritual path. Now, everyone's spiritual path is ruled by universal laws, but it's also unique to the individual. It's your spiritual path, it's not anyone else's. So you can't follow an identical path to another person efficiently. If you try and mimic what someone else is doing, it'll be inefficient. But if you make it your own, you can slipstream and move through your development more quickly. So where do you start with all this? Well, vital breathing or pore breathing acts as an excellent foundation. And the reason why is because it activates your intuitive guidance system, your intuition. When you're relaxing the breath into the ball outside the body and hanging the muscles, gently opening the joints and getting this electromagnetic feeling, your hands become sensitive. They become sensitive to energy. That sensitivity to energy through your hands and your consciousness feeling something that it doesn't normally feel, it moves from physical perception to vital life force perception. Then when you go into nature and you vital breathe with your eyes and through your skin and through your sense of smell and through your sense of taste, and you start tuning all the gates of your mind to life force, your intuitive guidance system starts to switch on. And that intuitive guidance system is very, very intelligent. Your whole spiritual journey can be seen and unfolded from your intuitive guidance system. You have the intuitive guidance system that relates to the body, which relates to the astral plane, which relates to the spirit, it relates to akasha, it relates to the non-dual light states of consciousness. And it's pre-built. People have moved down this path before. There's a group consciousness of experiences that have already taken place. And your intuitive guidance system is sensitive to this group consciousness of accumulated experiences. And people have walked down that path before you, and you can follow. And your intuitive guidance system will take you there. You don't need physical teachers. You don't need a ton of books. You don't need to be studying all the time. You just need a basic framework. Franz Baden presents that basic framework very, very efficiently to activate your spirit senses. And the fundamentals of Buddhism are very, very handy because they are continually pointing out non-self ideals and how to release any sense of self rather than reinforcing. The biggest burden of training akasha is people touch limited akasha. It reflects into their sense of self, and they get a sense of empowerment, which on one level is positive, but on another level binds them. They get a supernatural self. And Buddhism and the basic philosophies and principles of Buddhism allow you to release that sense of self. The initiation to Hermetics framework allows you to have a very solid method of training the body, training the astral, and training the mind for that liberation to take place. So you combine these two, you have an excellent method of moving forward, because Buddhism is constantly defabricating and dissolving its own view of reality as you move forward. So it's constantly in a state of shift. And Hermetics allows you to understand how to develop the three bodies to become psychic to start with. Buddhism doesn't seem to have, you can't access its true value without your intuitive guidance system being switched on, because you person simply can't understand what the terms in Buddhism are without direct experience of them. You need the intuitive guidance system for that. So the initiation process trains your psychic abilities, awakens the intuitive guidance system, and Buddhism has a framework of how you can create this platform to let go of as you develop the non-self formless states of consciousness. Okay, so I hope this helps with people who are interested in developing and cultivating the stillness and working with akasha. And my advice to you is, as you train, get used to identifying what words mean. What is concentration? And relate it to direct experiences. What is akasha? Relate it to direct experiences. What is the astral body? When you slow the energy down and the energy accumulates, it gets thick, that's the astral. And get a sense of what these words mean so that when you formulate your training process, that they have deeper meaning. They actually represent something of value to you. Okay, thanks for your time, everyone, and see everyone on the next video.